In this video, we're going to take a look at some geometry standards that fall across 3 different grade levels. The big thing with these geometry standards is that they're laying a foundational understanding that students will need as they begin to make sense of fractions. Let's dive in and take a look. In first grade, students should be able to partition circles and rectangles into 2 and 4 equal shares. They should be able to describe the shares using the words halves, fourths, and quarters, and use the phrase half of, fourth of, and a quarter of. They should be able to describe the whole as 2 of or 4 of the shares. And they should also understand that for these examples, that decomposing into more equal shares creates smaller shares. So in first grade, students should be able to take rectangles, squares, and circles and partition them into halves. And they should also be able to do that into quarters or fourths. Now, let's take a look at that circle. This is a common misunderstanding that students will have as we begin to partition shapes. They're not 4 equal shares here. That's better. Then, in second grade, students are going to build on that understanding from first grade. In second grade, students are expected to partition circles and rectangles into 2, 3, or 4 equal shares. Describe the shares using the words halves, thirds, half of, a third of, etc. And describe the whole as 2 halves, 3 thirds, 4 fourths, recognizing that equal shares of identical wholes need not have the same shape. So again, we're just building on that understanding that we've developed in first grade. And you can see here that we've partitioned all of these squares into fourths, but we've done it 3 different ways. So the last part of this standard says that students should recognize that even though these shapes don't appear to be the same in size, they are. They're just not the same shape. And then in third grade, students are going to extend on this understanding from first and second grade as they partition shapes into parts with equal areas. They should be able to express the area as each part of a unit fraction of a whole. For example, they should be able to partition a shape into 4 parts with equal area and describe that area of each part as a quarter of the area of the shape. We really want students, as they're tackling this in third grade, to understand that 4 fourths is also the same as 4 1/4. It's this understanding of a unit fraction that we really need to try and focus on in third grade. We need students to make this connection. Let's take a look at how we could assess this standard in a K2 classroom. In this piece of classroom action, we're going to take a look at what assessing this standard could look like in a remote learning setting. Here, the student will be engaged in a 3-act task where he's trying to find out how many orange slices are inside the bowl. Let's dive in and take a look. All right, so let me ask this question. If we wanted to figure out how many slices are actually in here, how could we explain that? How could we figure that out? What do you think? What would you need to know?
You'd need to know how many oranges there are.
How many whole oranges there are?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said, go ahead.
Then you could cut them in quarters and then you could know.
All right. So I have some of that information for you, bud. Let me do this here. There are, and you know they're quarters, right?
Yes.
Okay. There are 5 oranges in that bowl. How many slices are there? You have
24.
24? Okay. Do you have your paper and pencil there with you?
Yes.
Can you prove it to me? Convince me that it's 24.
Because every orange is full sliced. Wait. That is actually not true. It's 2 24s, so 48.
Okay.
Because each side is... Wait, no. That's wrong.
How many? So let me ask this question. So I see you started doubling things, right? You doubled there. So my question then for you is how many oranges do you have?
5.
And each orange is cut up into a quarter. What does that mean?
It means like a quarter is like it's small.
It's small. How many pieces are you cutting that orange up into if you cut it into quarters?
4.
4. Can you show me what that would look like with a drawing? If you drew an orange and then you partitioned it into fourths or quarters, what would that look like? Nice. Hold it there. Okay. Right on. Now, how many oranges is that right there? How many oranges do you have?
1. 1.
One orange.
That's 1 orange and 4 quarters.
In 4 quarters. So what happens if you had 5 oranges? How many wedges would you have? Okay, 1 second, bud. Before you go ahead and you start drawing them all out, hang on. Can you picture them now in your head? Can you show me what you have on your piece of paper right now? Don't draw anymore. Don't draw anymore. Show me what you have. Oh, so you've already so how could you do that if you weren't gonna, like, I don't want you to count them all up. How could you add those all up?
Just by the 1.
Like if you didn't count by ones, how could you do it if you didn't count by ones?
You could like use the 1 orange and then you could use the 4 quarters and count the quarters 5 times.
So as you can see from the video, this student is able to master that first and second grade standard of partitioning circles and rectangles into quarters or halves. Now the big thing to think about is as this student begins to move from second grade to third grade, we want them not to see it as 4 quarters, but we want them to see that iteration of unit fractions. So when they're looking at this image of 4 fourths, we really want them to see 4 1/4. So one of the big things as we work through first grade, second grade, and third grade is it's all about partitioning shapes. And there's a sequence that's happening as students move throughout the years. In first grade, students are partitioning shapes into halves and fourths. Then in second grade, we add thirds to that continuum. And then in third grade, we go all the way up to sixths and eighths. So by the end of third grade, and as third grade teachers, we should only be playing around with fractions that involve these denominators. And then after we've built this solid understanding of halves, quarters, thirds, sixths, and eighths in third grade, we extend and build on that continuum again in fourth grade as we introduce fifths, tenths, and twelfths. It's all about understanding where the math is coming from so that we can continue to build on the understandings that we already know are there.